and media that is covering the situation of this world feels incredibly meaningful. I'll also say that the stars of this report are all of you who are innovating in covering immigrant communities. And today in this room, we have got, or this virtual room, whatever you want to call it, we've got Venus Radio in Kansas, Selectly, Somali TV in Seattle, Bangladeshi Digital TV in Queens, and I hope you're going to get a chance to hear from many of these outlets today. So we also have, I mean, there's so many more academics from Wisconsin, Arizona, and Texas. We've got city government leaders from Colorado, Washington, New York, who do such important work connecting to immigrants and refugees. And then so many people who help make this report come together. As Graciela said, we want to make sure that this report is truly a forum, and a forum in this virtual world of Zoom. As she said, if there are questions, please ask them. For those of you who are unfamiliar, I'm just going to reiterate again, I know some of us live on Zoom, but for some of us it's new. So you just go to the bottom of your screen and scroll over the chat. And I can see some people, thank you, Anne, for sharing. Some people are already using the chat to connect. What I'd like to invite is we have some special guests here who are included in the database of the report and identified as growing and innovative media outlets serving immigrant communities. I'd like to ask you if you can please write the name of your outlet, a link to it, and what's been the most important way you are serving your community during the current crises. And I say crises or I don't know if crises is the right word, but in the current moment. So if you can share there, that would be fantastic. And while you're sharing, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the report. So we started research. We really wanted to find examples of how outlets were finding ways to grow at this challenging time. We knew many outlets serving immigrants were closing down, but how are outlets growing? To identify outlets, we interviewed and received nominations from more than 150 immigrant organizers, media experts, and journalists across the country. And then we went in and selected, we knew we could not create a comprehensive, not a complete list. It would be impossible to do so. But what we created is a cross-section where we found outlets from across the country serving immigrants in more than 30 different languages and on more than 25 different digital platforms. I also realize that many of you who are here today are from outlets that might not be included in the report, but are innovating. And we're thrilled to have you here with us as well. And so I wanted to also encourage you to share how you are serving your communities in the chat also, and some of the challenges that you're coming up against as well. So that, want to create that space. And I saw just now that Claudia from Wichita, Kansas shared. We have got John and Carla from Omaha, from El Perico, which is a really interesting business model, pairing an former alt weekly along with a consultancy, which maybe we'll hear a little bit more about later. I am gonna, and yes, Maritza, thank you for sharing as well. Maritza's doing really interesting work with WhatsApp with Connecta Arizona. I wanted to just highlight very briefly, there were 4 key findings we had. We saw outlets that were, as I mentioned, incredibly diverse in platform, radio, newspapers, on channels, social media, WeChat. But there were 4 things that we really started to see that were in common. They're leveraging, one, they're wielding a variety of social media and apps as tools for truth. 2, they're leveraging small staffs and reaching big audiences. 3, they're globalizing both production and audiences. And 4, diversifying business models and revenue streams. We are going to speak today, and I wanted to make sure it's not me talking too much, so I'm done. But right now I want to bring on Rocio Tirado and Brenda Murphy. And for those of you, also who right now I have the Zoom with everyone's faces. The speaker view may be a little bit easier, especially as we start doing the interviews for those of you who are new to Zoom. So Rocio and Brenda are COO and editor and CEO of Jambalaya News in New Orleans. I first got to know them in September, and since then have been twice to their newsroom in New Orleans, once before it burned down and once after it burned down. So these women, even before the pandemic hit, were dealing with catastrophes. But at the same time, they run a newsroom, a soccer league, a radio station, and they live stream. So Brenda and Rocio, I was hoping that you could explain to me a little bit more and share with us how Jambalaya News works, but particularly how live streaming and Facebook Live has been a game changer for you. How have you used it during the pandemic, and how has it changed your work?
Here we go.
Yay.
Okay, first of all, I want to introduce our baby. It's a newspaper. Believe it or not, for the last 3 months, March, April, and May, we can't print out the newspaper. We cannot because of the pandemic. Many businesses in the city closed. We are very impacted with this situation because we reduce our personnel just in 3 persons. Rocio, Brenda, and another lady help us to develop the radio station. Today is the National or International Social Media Day. And thanks God for social media, because social media saved our life in this particular case. Because without newspaper in the street, we don't have anything to do, just streaming by tuning radio, streaming by Facebook Live, and was very, Facebook was the most important tool in social media, help us to spread the message, because we have a lot of community without resource. We have a lot of community don't speak English. We have a lot of community with many problems. And Jambalaya News was and is the media can help the community. Unite the local governments with people in need, and unite resource with people in need. And we use Facebook 100%. 100%. All the last 3 months, increase our streaming live, increase our participation in live, increase our coberturas de noticias, how you say? Coverage in different places, and doing the live, because it's the only media we have at that moment. And we use like Instagram, because in Instagram and Twitter, many people from the government interactúa, how you say interact more. And we use Instagram and Twitter to reshare in Spanish the message they place in English. And this is the other tool, because we don't have many people in the government speak Spanish. They send us the press release, and we have to translate in Spanish the press release, and it's double job, and it's hard because it's easy when you serve a community, understand English or the language you use. But in our case, probably many of the people in the panel are in the same problem. Receive one press release or something like that, have to translate in the language you serve the community. And we do a lot of things like that, but it's a challenge, but I'm happy because we almost prepare for the challenge. The fire in October, no resource for the last month, but we're still alive, and we have a passion for do this, and this is the most important.
So I will give you a little background of the newspaper. It was founded in 2004, and then Katrina came, and the newspaper was a sports newspaper. But when Katrina hits, we didn't have no sports to talk about. So we changed a little bit the newspaper, and we made it local news. That was our emphasis, that we were just doing local news. And what it really helped, well, after Katrina, we did not have a lot of Latinos here in New Orleans, so the southeast of Louisiana. Right after Katrina, we had a lot of Latinos coming in to rebuild the city. So the government wasn't prepared to have a population that it was growing, and it was growing really, really fast, and they were speaking Spanish. They weren't speaking English. Right now, at that time, it was like 2% of population of Latinos in the parish that we belong to. Right now, we're 32%. And you will go into some schools and they don't have one staff member that they speak Spanish. So the need for the news, for local news in Spanish is big. We fought for a long time to have press releases translated in Spanish, or somebody at the city to speak Spanish. Well, right before Latoya Control, the mayor of New Orleans, came on board, we were this close to get it done, that to have somebody that speaks Spanish. So when Mayor Control came in, she was the one who hired an interpreter company to, right after their conference, there will come somebody and speak Spanish, and it was right on time, because
Rosa,
right when COVID came, go ahead.
I think I want to bring it back. I'm going to bring, sorry. Kathy, can you mute yourself? Great.
Sorry.
No problem. Rosa and Brenda, I think what you're saying, and I think this is really important, is that you have really for a long time played a role of interpreters, where you have been translating, and then you've been able to do it so much quicker with the live translation, but then you're also getting more and more questions. And I want to actually use that to transition for a moment. We'll come back to you on that later, Brenda and Rocio. But to Gary, because Gary, you have, so many of you know Gary Pierre. He's played a role at the center as director in the past and organizing immigrant serving media outlets in New York. But you've also, Gary, seen many crises, right? Tell me a little bit, if you could share, about how you as a journalist and with the Haitian Times, which is the newspaper that you founded and which is now a digital publication, have dealt with covering these crises, and then also where your role as interpreter has shifted some over the time, and particularly in the current challenges you're facing. Gary, do we have you still? Oh, there
Yes, my name is Gary Pierre. I'm the founder of the Haitian Times. I founded a newspaper. It was a newspaper back then, print, because I felt I knew that the Haitian community was undergoing a transformation from an exile group to an immigrant group. And let me explain a little bit. When my parents came over in the early 60s, the whole idea was they will stay in New York for a little bit after the dictator, Papa Doc, was overthrown. They will go back. 30 years later, they were still here. No one has gone anywhere. And so we were becoming an immigrant group. A lot of us were born here, were hyphenated Americans. And so at the time I was working at the New York Times. And occasionally I would do a story on the Haitian community. And the way the stories were embraced by the community made me think that maybe there was a business there. And I took a leap of faith and I bet on myself and started the Haitian Times. And the Haitian Times has a very complicated mission, very carefully calibrated, because our motto is bridging the gap. Well, what is the gap? Well, there are several gaps. There was at the time the generational gap, and there was a gap between Haiti and the United States, where there were very few people in Haiti really understood the Haitian community because there was not much being reported about the community. And so there was a lot of myth and misunderstandings. And what we try to do is try to create a platform where information that's as verified as it's going to be can be processed and people have a better understanding. But given what Haiti is, and we won't go into that history because we don't have enough time, is that there is always a crisis. Some of it self-inflicted, some of it nature-inflicted, but that's what we do. We cover crisis. Haiti is a car crash that we've always have to explain to people what it is. And so we have a very good understanding on how to cover these such things. And 3 months ago, we were going along, managing, planning what next. And then this hit. Immediately, what we did, we just brought everybody together and decided how we're gonna cover the story. Because we realized fairly quickly that the Haitian community was at the crosshair of this pandemic for two reasons. One, we are overwhelmingly work in the healthcare industry, and many of us suffer from the so-called underlying conditions. And immediately we knew this was going to be a hard hit, and we basically marshaled out our resources, the team, and started planning how are we going to cover, what kind of stories are we going to do. And immediately I sort of bring my mainstream media experience to the fore and just thought about, okay, how would the New York Times do it? And we went out with that mindset, but doing it in a way that's more connective to the Haitian community. We were producing 2 or 3 stories a day. And when we saw the number of deaths rising in the Haitian community, I immediately said, listen, we're gonna have to do a virtual wall, because I've been there before. I saw one done at the New York Times, and I knew that that's something that is necessary and as a way to mourn those who have passed during this pandemic. And so we've been really cranking out stories, but also one of the stories that we're particularly proud of is a story that looked at the mental health issue recently, because in most of our community, mental health is a taboo issue that's not discussed. But in this case, we felt that this was as much a mental health story as it was a health story. And so we went there, we talked about the role of voodoo and mental health. So we really sort of like give you a window into our community, into our psyche. And I think that's what we try to do, so that people, what we want at the end of the day, for people to understand the Haitian community, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because like everyone else, we were complex, complicated people, and we want the Haitian Times to reflect that. We don't want to be some publication that's always promoting the beautiful people among us, the success stories, and then not delving into the challenges that the community face, because it does. One of the stories that we did as well was about how when the Open Society Foundation donated millions of dollars to undocumented immigrants in New York City for it to be dispersed because they were not part of the CARE Act. They didn't get any money. And so the Haitian community was being sort of like pushed aside a little bit. And we wrote story about that. And community organizations were able to secure money for the community. And so, at the end of the day, that's our mission, to really defend the community, and also to scold the community when we feel that it needs to move where it needs to be, because we are still relatively a new group in the United States and New York. And so this is the role that I think we're playing. And while this story was percolating, we have another story thrown at us, the Black Lives Matter movement. To me, is as important a story to cover. And we were, the first day or two, we were thinking about, okay, how do we handle this? And immediately, again, we realized we all in, covering it from every angle. And it's interesting too, because the Haitian community has been a bit reticent about stepping out. And this time, for whatever reasons, I guess for obvious reasons, they have been really active and the Black Lives Matter movement and been getting out there. I mean, if you've been out to Brooklyn, Grand Army Plaza, you could hear the Haitian drumming. They bring the energy of Haiti to this protest. And so we've been covering that as well.
Oh, interesting. Thank you, Gary. I want to turn next to Raj Singh, who's manager of Punjabi Radio. And Raj, your work has really amazed me in its flexibility and your nimble ability to change platforms as well as connect with your audience. I think part of that's by necessity, right? Because much of your audience, you have a big block that's truck drivers, but you've also positioned yourself very well there, going from sideband radio, which is, maybe you can explain to us more about how sideband radio works. And then AM, FM, then you did texting in, you've done streaming, you do WhatsApp. Basically, you name it, you're on that platform. I wanted to know if you can tell us a little bit more about how you've developed and also how you deal with so many different platforms.
Thank you, Daniela. I'm Raj Singh. I'm with Punjabi Radio USA. I'm the general manager there. A decade ago, a couple of community members decided that the Punjabi community needs to have their own voice. There are multiple newspapers outlets at the time, but it was not a common platform for our community to have our own voice. We faced many issues, especially after 2001, 9/11. Punjabis were targeted because of their identity, how they looked, and we faced many racist discrimination, all these kind of problems, and our community didn't have a platform. So that was the main mission at that time, that our community need to have a voice and to solve our identity crisis as well. There are many other organizations which are working on it right now as we are speaking. So at the time when we started the radio, the good thing was that we were located in Silicon Valley, San Jose, and we knew more about technology. And San Jose State University students, I am one of them. I did my master's in electrical engineering over there, but somehow I came into this part. So after that, I have many friends who will volunteer here, and we from the first day had our website. We decided to have our app as soon as possible. We were on the Facebook at the time when Facebook was not all that popular. So that's how we started to build from the first day. And because we were technologically more aware what's going on, so we decided to capture any moment, any opportunity which came our way. A couple of years later, then we came to know about a service to dial to listen to the radio station. So we jumped onto that. It was Audio Now. Now there was another company, Zeno, they merged, and there's only one company now for that. So that's how it gave us so much flexibility, and it gave us power to reach to persons, to people where there was no terrestrial radio station. We started on a sideband carrier. It was 1950s technology, where a lot of stores will play a music on the background. So we use that technology to have our radio signal delivered to people. Or we will give out radio sets which we will tune into that specific frequency. It is not on a regular radio dial as we see in cars or trucks, but you need to have a special radio set. So we got those built in China and shipped here. We gave it to our community people. So that's how we put our first feet in the community. After years and years of good programming, giving them important information, the community started to trust us. So after that, we got the opportunity to acquire a few AM stations. Now we have 4 AM stations, 4 FM stations with them. And now, as we have seen in last few years, the social media is pretty, as you can say, is pretty hot. So we decided to get on every social media platform, uh, doing live streaming, going on YouTube, going on Facebook. Then we as a lot of our community is still back in Punjab, and we do cover news sources from there as well. What is happening there as well? People over here want to know what's happening there. People over there want to know what's happening in US as well. So we created WhatsApp groups from all across the globe where people can send their phone numbers to us, and we will send them important news every day, important programs every day, so that they can listen to it, watch it, and be informed what's happening. And during
Can I just, so do you, we have one question for you, which
Sure.
is, do you, I know you broadcast in Punjabi. Do you broadcast in any other languages?
Most of the time it's Punjabi, but we have programs which were in Hindi as well. And there's it's a Fiji community as well. They used to do a program on us, but it was for a short time, not those many hours, maybe a couple of hours a week, but we do it usually in Hindi the other time. So most of our programming is in Punjabi.
Great,
So
thank you.
as earlier speakers have told, I think any community ethnic media, it's their first fundamental job to do the translation, because they do not provide that translation to all the other speakers. So anybody who is coming into this, they need to understand you have to do it on your own. Nobody's going to provide you with that. You have to work on that. So during this crisis, Daniela, and there was a big problem for our community because they're not proficient in English, and a lot of our government programs or assistance programs, people were not aware what's going on. So so that's what we did. We told them about the resources which were available to the community, so they can be sure that economically they can survive this pandemic. Before that as well, whenever there was a need for a community call to do something better for the community, we will do it. During pandemic, we used to do this Update America, the news program, uh, once every day. But during pandemic, we have to do it twice because there was just too much information to give. There was too much information. A lot of things were happening every hour. So that's how we lot of other I heard a lot of other conventional media sources, they have to cut the hours, they have to cut the jobs, but instead of taking any cuts or doing things like that, we have to increase our availability and our programming so that people are more aware what's going on right now. That's what happened. And during the protest as well, as we have seen with the Black Lives Matters, we were giving them constant updates what's happening. As a minority community in America, it's important for us to let other minorities communities know what is happening with other minorities at the same time in America. So that's how we try to do it. During pandemic, our listenership, our viewership has gone manifold. It has increased a lot, and I say that this is because of the 10 years of trust we have built up in the community, that people believe whatever we are saying, whatever we are telling them is the truth. So we like the responsibility and proud of it, how we try to do it. So where we are right now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And finally, we're going to hear from Malik Abdul Samad, who is, I think, for the newest outlet here. But Malik, you're also dealing with partly this question of translation and how do you connect with communities and how do you do it most effectively? And then also, how do you go more in depth and do, so you're reporting via social media, and then you're also doing your podcast. And I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about how in the past few months, both have grown and how you've connected and served your community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. So I'm Malik Abdulsma from Arabic Media Company. What we do, our mission is to connect our Arabic speaking immigrant community with the cities they live in. There are so many media outlets that speak in Arabic across the US because there's probably like 3 million Arab descendants in the US, Arabs or Arab Americans. But unfortunately, most of these media outlets, if not all, are only addressing the community. They talk about what's going on in the community, community news, community neighborhoods, but they don't try to connect that community with the bigger city. And from our perspective, and this is something that we suffered, it's really hard for us to like know the resources of the city when we don't have like a direct outlet to learn it. Fortunately for me and my co-founder, we went to school here, so we had a lot of American friends, and they helped us get our way and like learn our way in the city. But that's not the case for so many people. So our mission was to connect the community with the city by just telling them what's going on, all the events, all the resources, all the things they can do in the city. Because from our perspective, it's such a missed opportunity for you to live in a city like Chicago and not know what's going on here, right? You're in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and then you still like are not aware of what's going on in the city. You're not involved in the city. So that was our core mission. And then we tried to go direct to the community by speaking to them in Arabic. So we would take articles from different American news outlets and translate them to Arabic, and we put them on our website, categorize them, just making it as easy as possible. And our main line of communication with our audience was Facebook. Obviously, it's like so easy, everybody's on Facebook. But like you mentioned, we also have a podcast. And the biggest challenge we found is that you have two segments of the community. You have the newcomer immigrant that doesn't have great English, doesn't read and write properly, they're having a harder time connect with the city. And then on the other hand, you have the highly educated, Arab immigrants that they already like have higher education in the US, they're fluent in English, they already know how to find their resources. So in order to address both, we thought that we need to kind of like segment our audience, and, the website and the articles are targeting one portion of the community, and the podcast is targeting more the higher educated portion of the community. And we go into like more in-depth topics, more in-depth resources. We talk more about like entrepreneurship, building businesses, and just finding success within like the professional community in the US. So we did these two things. And then obviously during the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement, things have changed big times for us. So we moved from, addressing the history and architecture and events and resources of the city to addressing daily news. Saying, this is what happened today, this is a curfew, this is what you can do, this is where you can move, which was not what we've intended to do in the beginning, but there was like a lot of demand for people to know day to day. And like Raj said, over the 4 years that we've worked, we were able to build a lot of trust with our following. So people were coming to us to know exactly what was going on in the city. And I forgot if I mentioned or not, but we're active in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. So in all these major cities, there's a big community, and they came to us, and we suddenly started seeing reach in the millions. I mean, we topped 5 million people reached over the last 30 days. Just because we were like on top of it. We went on the street, we did live videos, we did live reporting. We tell people like, where are the protests? Where can they go and when can they not? Just try to be like hands-on covering. And then we partnered with the city. We started translating some of the resources that the city provided during the coronavirus pandemic. And we also partnered with the City Bureau, which is an organization of independent journalists that, address immigrant communities as well. And they put together a really detailed guide for resources in English, and then we translated that in Arabic. So now people have access to knowing, where can they seek help if they have an issue with their housing, or they're being kicked out, or if their utilities are being cut off, or if they were laid off and need unemployment. Also, in addition to that, because people were demanding a lot of more like timely information, we started bringing experts and leveraging our network to tell the community about how can they apply for PPP, for example. How can they apply for unemployment? How can they, find jobs, or what are their basic rights? Can my landlord kick me out of my apartment? So we started bringing experts, and also on immigration as well, because there's a lot of talk about more tightening immigration regulations, and some people lost their jobs and they're already on work visas, so they were freaking out, not knowing what to do. So we brought an accountant, we brought an immigration attorney and other experts, and we would do live videos or recorded shows and publish them and try to do follow-ups. So we do the video, get questions from our audience, and do a second follow-up and a third follow-up. And now that things are getting more relaxed, we're going to go back to the role that we started, which is, again, trying to connect the community with the city.
Thank you, Malik. So there are two questions here, which I think are actually good questions for all of the panelists and all of the outlets here too, if anyone wants to chime in. One question from Curtis is, for media organizations, and when you're doing it through Facebook or through any, I would add, social media or any other platform that you don't own, you're not in control. In case the algorithm changes, are you trying to how are you dealing with the fact that the algorithm could change? The question is, are you actively trying to make this destination you control more central to your information flow? And I think that is a question for everyone. And I see Mohammed also from Salaxley Radio. Mohammed, I don't know if you can chime in on this, because you are exclusively on social media and you're actually sitting in your car right now, but I don't know if you can step in if you're concerned, because I know you're on YouTube and Facebook only, right?
Yep, and thank you, Benny.
Oh, I don't know if the connection's going to hold.
This great report. And what we do is mostly is when we start the program is way to improve the community, their life, and their education, all that kind of stuff. What we bring together at the city in Seattle, the official and also the community leaders explain. Mostly we do like interview.
Yeah.
So what we do is like in way give the information to people, and the way most of Somalian people right here is they like visual. They wanna see what the topic. That's why we focus on the video with social media. And
yeah. So one of my favorite things, Mohammed told me that he started doing this because he was doing YouTube videos in math, because you had some challenges with math when you first moved to the United States. You wanted some in Somali. It really worked well. But now there's various, not only did you start doing this, but there are various Somali TV stations in Minneapolis and in Seattle. And you seem to, what I've observed over the past few months is you've really taken off, where you have a huge audience. But are you concerned at all that you're dependent on YouTube and Facebook, that you don't have another place?
And yeah, it's very concerned when you don't control like these platforms. And the only thing we can reach is the community has become like this social media, and we don't have a choice. So the only way is like just to use it and give the information the people need mostly, and that's what we focus on for the interviews, whether the city or the community. So that information, the only way we can reach the people become like this social media and the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram and YouTube. And that's where we have a lot of followers, and that's where we post the information they need. And it's become like the main, now the people really start to rely on those news where we provide them.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning, when we started, it was like, I started as like you said, and teach the young generation and for math, and since we're a lot of all the people and watching and this kind of platforms, we say like, well, we don't give them information they also need it, and that's where we focus on mostly and the interviews and the success of the story of the community. It become one of the major people really like when they see someone of their community doing well and some kind or
Mohammed, you
or
were
financial.
breaking up a little, so I'm gonna come back for a second. I think there's a couple, I wanna follow up, and I saw Curtis followed up also on this question about, for other platforms, is SMS an effective way? And I know that's something that you've worked with, Raj, to an extent. You're on many different platforms. And then Maritza, if you're able to speak to it too, I might ask you to share about that too. But Raj, maybe if you can start and explain how you've used SMS. And then also any concerns, since you're also the person in Silicon Valley, what are your concerns about platform dependency?
Yeah, definitely. We use WhatsApp because it's easier to make groups over there of many people at the same time, and you can send them messages. I think the main thing in that is you don't want to send too many messages in the same day. You have to do it like at a certain time of the day so that people are actually connected to you all the time. So it has given us a great flexibility. People who are mobile, who doesn't have time during the programs, they are at work or at any other place, they don't get a time to listen to it. So it's easy for them to access anytime they want afterwards. So platform dependability is a big issue, I would say. Like, yeah, definitely. If there is no Facebook, YouTube, or WhatsApp like that, our audience will reduce a lot. It will shrink a lot. I think everybody can say the same thing about that. So we try to find out whatever new is coming up so that we are always on there. If some platforms go bust, and at least we have some other place to go and reach there. But having a terrestrial radio stations that give us, I would say, a great foundation. Anyways, if there are no platforms left, but that platform is always there, uh, at least then we still have our voice connected to our community.
Are you still using Xeno radio or dial-in? And could you explain how that works as well?
Yes, we do that. They use what we do is like we send our stream to them, and they have certain numbers which our community can dial and listen to the different programs, whatever we have. That gives us a Xeno guys give us a flexibility that we can upload our programs and act as in podcast and listen to older programs as well through their phone number. And if they want to listen to the live program, there are multiple options in there.
Interesting. Thank you. Maritza, maybe you could share with us about how you're using SMS right now.
We're using WhatsApp actually because it's free, it's easy. You don't consume that many data, and for some immigrants, that's an issue because they don't have these unlimited plans. So we're using WhatsApp, and Connect Arizona is basically targeting people from Sonora, Mexico, and Arizona because we are obviously our families are connected, and has been extremely successful. But managing a group with all these people needs to have its rule. For example, we try to limit it to 2 posts per day. One in the morning is news you can use, and the news of the day. In the afternoon, well, we're focusing on the pandemic and immigration basically during this time. So we share like a myth of the day. And then I open up the WhatsApp group for just 1 hour per day from 2 to 3 p.m. And we have La Hora del Cafecito. And this is when all the group can interact with each other. So they ask questions. We have experts that we invite to join us in our conversation. And I always tell them, if you have any questions, just send me a message 101 and we can help you out with that. But if you don't want to be part of the group and you just want to receive the news, what we're doing is working on a distribution list. I know the WhatsApp has a limit of 5,000. We haven't reached it yet, hopefully soon. And we will see what we can do then. But for the WhatsApp group, the limit is 256 if you add it by hand. But if you share the link with them, your WhatsApp group link, you can have as many people as you want. So that's been proven to be really successful. And I try to have everything like an archive on Google Drive because we don't have a web page yet. we're sharing everything on social media like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with hashtags, so I can find it easy just in case that I can go back and look for information. But we are planning on having a webpage so we can archive and have everything that we have posted so far, and we can own it, not Facebook or WhatsApp or any other media.
Interesting. So we just received another question that I'm going to throw back at all of you from Neha. To what extent does the content you produce during the election COVID times focus on training the community to spot disinformation? Research indicates that non-English speaking immigrants are the primary target of disinformation campaigns. What type of rumors are you seeing, I would say, and how are you responding to those? I think everyone I interviewed said they're seeing rumors move quickly on social media. And I might switch, you can let us know in the chat. I'm gonna ask Rocio and Brenda for a moment. What are the rumors you've been seeing and how are you responding?
They say that COVID is not real and you can just treat it with hot tea, some lemon, and some aspirin, and that will be it. Don't use a mask because you will get sick, or don't go and get tested because they want to put something in your nose and kill you. I mean, there's a lot of rumors. That's why one of the things is we go direct to the source. We go to the city and we interview somebody that speaks Spanish. So we are not saying, we're not telling people, we're making the doctor from the city to say why it's so important, or somebody, but it's from the city. And we and then Brenda is like the mom of every Latino here. And like this morning, we got a video for this weekend from a bar, and it was just a party over 100 people in a very small place. And it's just, that's Brenda's, and she just goes and tells people.
Every one of the people work here doing tests. I do my test on 3 weeks ago, and I transmit a live and say, hey, I'm here, I'm doing my job, I'm doing the test. It's not a problem. It's not a big deal. Please do the same thing. Protect your family, protect yourself, and do your job. That's it. But we try to connect, like Rocio said, the people from government, from health department, say exactly what happened and what if it's something risk, they say it's risk. If something is not risk, they say it's not risk. It's sure for everybody.
Interesting. I wanted, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I want to add something quick to this.
Mm-hmm.
In our experience, it wasn't only the rumors that are out there, but also the thought, and you know, a lot of Arab immigrants that came here recently fled the war to come to the US, and you would hear things going around like, well, I lived in the middle of a war zone, this is not going to kill me. Well, I was in a place where missiles were like falling on my neighborhood, didn't die, this is not going to kill me. And that argument was just like the biggest false equivalence you can ever hear. So we had to just go out and say, okay, you can't do that, you can't make that argument, this is not the same thing. Just because you survived one catastrophe, you're not going to survive a second one if you're not careful about it. So
that's really
Can I
important.
say something?
Yeah.
Sorry to interfere here, but I'd like to put an input about what's been discussed here. My name is Pierre Bijani. I'm with the largest Arabic English newspaper in Ohio, Profile News. And I just sent Malik a message, private message I'd like to connect with all of these Arabics. We are in the process, belong to a group called Solution Journalism, and we are in the process, and I'm a part of a solution for the Arabic Middle Eastern community, how to encounter this COVID-19. And we have interviewed the chairman of the Cleveland Clinic Global Center about the misunderstanding in the community about different issues. And there was really some outstanding disinformation that people are going to the clinic asking about, should I try to drink Clorox, or should I try to clean this with? So there was a lot of misunderstanding, and we're working on on this project right now, and I will be happy to share it with you once this project is done. We already started it, and there is a lot of misinformation. This is coming from a chairman of the Global Center at the Cleveland Clinic, also one of the largest hospital in the nation. I just wanted to emphasize this for you. Thank you.
I wanted, thank you, Pierre. I really appreciate you sharing that. We are about to hit 1 p.m. I know some of you are going to have to sign off, but we are going to keep going for another half an hour. Thank you to everyone who's been able to join us for this first hour. Kishore from Casocas, I was wondering if you could share for a minute, because I know that you are very active in the Nepali community here in New York. I say here in New York, I'm actually in LA, but I feel like virtually I'm in New York. So can you tell me, are there rumors circulating in the Nepali community, and what are they?
Yeah, hi everyone. There are so many rumors in Nepali community, and we have started fact checking for that. We are doing fact checking for rumors, and this is very popular right now because there are so many type of rumors like about coronavirus and other rumors, and we are trying to check the facts from different sources. And yeah, we have now we have a coronavirus resource center too. We have launched a coronavirus resource center, and Nepali community is minority community, you know, so they cannot understand, all people cannot understand English resources. That's why we translated those resources in Nepali language, and we have started resource center on our website. And they can find how to file unemployment, how to file PPP or SBA, other loans. We have so many resources, how to check, how to test COVID-19. So we have started resource center in Nepali language, and mostly we are in this time, the fact checking is very popular. So many people are sharing, and so many people are reading that text on the title. So there are so many rumors, and we are trying to stop those rumors.
Thank you, Kishore. And Gary, I was curious if you could share what you're seeing circulating in the Haitian community, and also how you're responding.
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
In terms of misinformation, what are you seeing circulating in the Haitian community, and how are you responding?
It was a complicated situation, because in the beginning, we were dealing with the rumor that Black people couldn't get this disease, that it was only rich people, rich white people. And so we had to fight that. And, you know, we had doctors to come on and talk about the absurdity of this rumor. And so basically, a classic way of dealing with mis or disinformation is to overwhelm it with quality information. I mean, at the end of the day, people are going to believe what they want to believe, but I think a part of our job is to overwhelm the false information, and we have done that. There's not, I mean, because we were affected so hard, there aren't too many rumors besides sort of like remedies that people will tell you to take, because they swear up and down that it has treated COVID and it's a preventative medicine and all of sort of things. But in terms of people taking it seriously, we don't have that problem, thank God. And so, but whenever we see rumors developing, we attack it. We did a story about that, a whole story talk about disinformation. The platform for that for us is WhatsApp. I don't know why. It is the one that where most of these information live. And we have a WhatsApp group that we started, but that's kind of fraught with problems, because sometimes the conversation can go all over the place and it's hard to control. And so we kind of, you know, laying low on that for a while because it really got out of control because we spent most of our day dealing with disinformation there on our own platform, no less, where that we had opened to share information with the public.
Interesting. And Raj, I know you wanted to jump in on this as well.
Yeah, in our community, quinine, you know, hydroxychloroquine, the president, which always is pushing for it, is very famous in our community, and we have to bring in specialists just to make sure that people don't think that okay, by taking quinine and you will be immune to COVID-19. And we brought in specialist infectious diseases doctors to tell people, to tell our community what precaution you should be taking, and just not you should be hearing to the experts, not just the president.
Anyone else want to jump in on that before we move to our last questions? I know, Madeline, you've done some, I realized I didn't ask you about SMS. I know you've done a bunch of work with SMS. With texting?
Yeah, the way, the way El Timpano has been responding, you know, particularly since COVID, because a lot of our, El Timpano serves Spanish-speaking immigrants in Oakland, California. And we know that a lot of our audience members don't have home internet or home computers. So, and the other method that we use to engage with our community is in person. And so since that was pretty much not an option during the shutdown, we've really been doubling down on our SMS engagement. And we use a platform called Zingle, and share with people information and resources and policies and guidance. And always include a question for our audience. And so that's really helped create a consistency and really deepen trust with our audience, which is really one way to combat rumors and misinformation. So, you know, we're seeing more of our audience members really know now if they do have questions or if they hear a rumor, they can reach out to El Timpano and ask a question.
On that, I also have noticed that a bunch of outlets. Go ahead, Mohammed.
I just want to add one thing, and the best way.
You froze. All right. Well, you're frozen. We'll get you back in a moment, hopefully. I know. Before I move on to the next one, Jose and also Carla, Jose Donius, you're both working in sort of the middle of the country with Latino immigrants. I was wondering if you've seen any rumors that have not come up so far, and if how you've been responding as well. I also wanted to get Claudia, you know, are there any specific to that we should know about to your regions of the country? Because I realize we've been focused a little bit on the two coasts. Oh, you're muted, Jose.
Yes, bad connection. I apologize.
Okay, Mohammed, I hear you're back.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and the connection is really bad. And I was just trying to add the rumors. The best way to fight is sometimes what we do is like a live. We do live, and we the people we encourage them to ask questions to the experts. And that's when they get the the response, really the correct response, and they take it from there. The rumors, when we figure out like that's the best way when someone who asks questions on live on the program, and when they get the correct response, really they take it. And I just want to add that one. The best way to respond is like open the mic, let them talk and ask questions, and explain to them what's going on, and the rumor is not true, and that expert will really do the well and explain it to them the best way. Thank you. Just want to add that.
No, that's an important point, and that's what we've been seeing across the country with very big audiences in different languages. We see it with Bangladesh, TBN 24, as well as TNTV in New York. I think, are you still here? No. But my one question is like, and this came up before, is the question of how do you choose who to translate, and how do you feel like how are you sure that you have the right experts? Is that ever a concern?
What we do is like, when we were trying to ask, we bring the best person who can explain really good and have knowledge for that field. You know, we don't just invite someone for financial talk about the health. So what we do is like we bring someone who really has that field, a public health expert. That person will answer every question related for the COVID-19.
So you make sure you have the right expert, and then you depend on that person and to translate the issue. Jose, I was asking you as well what the rumors are that you're seeing, and then also the role you play in responding to them. If you can tell us a little bit about how IDEA works and the role you've played in the recent months. You're on mute now. You're on mute still. Jennifer, can you unmute Jose? I'm sorry, we can't hear you still. You can respond in the chat and we'll be able to hear you then. That sounds great. I think the final, I've been so grateful to be able to hear from all of you here today. And I see also like people like Professor Jessica Rectis, who's been studying outlets across the country. Carla, who's doing really interesting work in Omaha. And so many more of your outlets. Gwen, I don't know if you want to speak to what you're seeing in the Japanese community for a second, since I haven't brought you up yet.
Sure, I guess I'd say for the Japanese community, there's all of the above with the pandemic, but I think there's been a lot of us responding to the rise in anti-Asian hate and bias crimes. And this is just something that our community really probably hasn't experienced to this extent since World War II. And so that has been something that we've been trying our best to keep on top of.
And how are you doing it? What's been effective for you? Because I know very well how you come from a print background.
Sure.
But you're also expanding digitally.
Yeah, we're trying our best to expand to Facebook, Instagram. We're participating in a podcast. I think Little Tokyo is very well organized. And so there's a number of organizations besides ourselves that have gathered and are kind of sharing resources. So we're on a Sustainable Little Tokyo podcast, and we do a weekly in English, Japanese, and Korean, kind of an update on what's going on. And so we're doing that. And just as usual, we send our reporters out and try to talk to people.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. Is there anyone else who wants to raise a question before we close out for today? Julia?
I just have a quick comment. Sorry.
Yes, Claudia, please.
Here in the Midwest, and I've heard a lot of my peers, they're sharing that a lot of times interviewing or getting the source to talk to them, that's not working in Kansas. For example, last night, the Kansas governor came up with the order, a mandate to everybody has to wear masks in public. And no matter who I interview and I'm always gonna find the people that said, oh, thank God. And then the other people that said, oh, that stupid governor, you know. And I just let him, I try not to intervene and let him like, you know, just comment and stuff, but it's hard. I think one of the things that I'm trying right now is like the repetition, and then on top of just bringing the expert voices to it, also start writing small blogs about stories, you know, and some of the things that I've learned with solution journalism too. I think like people can resonate better with stories and knowing that, oh, actually, because the question is like, do you actually know somebody with COVID-19? And right now in Kansas, I'm really alarmed because the most cases are Hispanics, like overall, over not Hispanics. So it's crazy.
The same in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, Alejandro, do you want to share anything else about what's happening in Wisconsin? Then Jessica, I see you have a question.
Thank you. No, basically, I follow the same issues with my community. The problem here in this area is that we don't have a large radio station or newspaper. Basically, my Wisconsin moved in this moment to expand or cover all the state in Spanish. And because we have a little towns and some far towns, and we have Spanish there, they cover the working in the farms, and they basically use here radio or internet radio. But we use the social media to share and to cover all these areas. But yeah, I share and compare and share the same issues we have with the Latino community in this area too.
I think that's an interesting point that came up in the report, is the transition of farm worker radio, which historically has been more, I don't know if we have anyone else here from farm worker radio, but the transition to social media for farm worker radio and digital radio. Jessica, did you want to say something? I saw you raise your hand before.
Yes, just a quick question. Thank you, Daniela and Graciela, for organizing this very interesting forum, very relevant. You guys, the work that you do, sometimes people tend not to see the importance of ethnic media and local media, hyperlocal media, and you guys are so important. So my question would be, how are you managing to survive in this momentum, right? It's very difficult for mainstream media newsrooms that are shrinking, and you guys are very relevant. So how are you doing to survive these challenging times?
I think two people who might be interesting, Carla, you haven't spoken yet, and Gary, you both have really interesting business models. So I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Well, actually here in Omaha, in Nebraska, you say how we survive. So we shut down the city just for maybe 1 month, more or less. But then everybody just continued their life. You know, we kind of release everybody. The restaurant was open.
I think, Carla, also in terms of the business model, so can you talk about the consultancy and how the consultancy works? The way in which there's a digital consultancy from Pioneer Media?
Well, actually, John is more involved on that, but I'm part more for El Perico because El Perico is part of Pioneer Media. So also The Reader is another magazine. But John is more involved as that. We do publish it. We help to some companies to develop themselves, and publish it. That's it that we do in the Pioneer Media. But John is more expert on that.
Yeah, I'll explain because your internet's getting a little reverberation, so I'm just going to explain what I know from John. But basically what Pioneer Media has done, which I think is really interesting, is that they found that they were selling print advertising, but many of the places they were selling print ads to didn't have a strong digital presence. And so instead they started to create a consultancy arm to their news outlet, creating digital presence. And that has helped to support both their English language, which was formerly Alt Weekly, now an Alt Monthly in Omaha, and their Spanish language community paper. And then Gary, you're involved in all sorts of different ways to support yourself financially. So can you explain some of those?
Well, the first important one was that when we went digital, we did go all digital, meaning that we had no overhead, no office, nothing, just the phone, just a laptop, and that's how we've been functioning. And so our cost was reduced to almost literally $600 a month, and that was mostly for softwares like Dropbox, Jetpack, all the other softwares you need for the back end to operate the site, Hootsuite, all of that fleet. And so what has happened now, thanks to the center, who's been aggressive with the city and not leaving us behind, us meaning the community and local papers, we've been able to get more advertising than we've ever had from the city since we closed up the paper. And so in many ways, we are ahead, and it's very ironic.
And Gary, let me just jump in on that, because I think there are a lot of people from around the country who don't have. Can you explain what happened with the city and how that changed? And then Gustavo just also wrote from Argentina, that he's interested in digital subscriptions, which I think you can also talk to.
Sure. So I guess a year and a half ago, Mayor Bill de Blasio made an executive order requiring rather, that every city agency spend 50% of its ad budget on publication like ours. And someone at CUNY was very smart, very forward thinking, say, hey, okay, that's great. He made that order, but are they really going to follow up? So CUNY created a position where they are keeping them honest, on top of them, and at the end of the day, they are the agency, the advertising agency that handles the bulk of the city advertising has been really reaching out to a lot of ethnic newspapers and community papers and the city, and providing us with some advertising that allows us to do what we're doing. I mean, because we don't have the overhead, so whatever we get is helpful, and it's been quite helpful. All the talk about the stories that we were doing, if we didn't have this help, there's no way we would have been able to cover this pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement the way we have. So that's that. But in terms of business model, I am a big proponent of subscriptions, because I don't think a free is a business. And we've known now for sure that the social media platforms cannot fund our journalism because of the what they pay. This is unfortunately a lesson that big metropolitan papers have found out. And so what we do is we provide 4 or 5 paragraphs in an article, and then when we have you going, and we say, hey, why don't you subscribe? And last few weeks, there's been a spike in subscription, because as we increase articles, we increase traffic, and we increase subscription. Every day we post about 5 to 8 stories. 3 of them are stories we translated out of Haiti and here. What we do there with those, we link them back to the original source, which is driving SEO with Google. I mean, Google thinks we're good people because we're sending traffic other places. That's important. And as far as other business model, I just copy the consultancy model, because this was something that was staring at me in my face and I just didn't think about it. And so now I've set up an appointment with 5 organizations in the community that I'm going to pitch to them, $1,500 a month, nothing crazy. Then we'll manage your social media accounts. We'll put ads of your business in the Haitian Times, and we'll help grow your business. And that's part of what we're going to do. I just thought, when I read it in your report, I said, brilliant, because of its simplicity. Of course, that's what we do. We are the conduit. We are the nexus. So why not use that? We keep thinking that, selling advertising. No, we're selling access. We're selling information. And so there's more. If you limit it just to the site, then people are not going to be interested. But if you show them that you can build their brand, their business across platforms, then they'll buy into it. And thank you for that. I learned that from
Thank you, Gary. And I want to just conclude. Raj, you wanted to say something else on this topic.
Yes, a great model. What just Gary described. I think a lot more communities need to, especially medias, need to get on that as well. How we survived is like, as I told you, like we have to increase our programming, and we lost about 30% of our advertisers since the pandemic increased, but it came into effect. So what happened is, like, we give information, especially about PPP, the stimulus checks and everything. People who needed it, they got it. But as a thank you, people started donating to us. That, okay, we need our community radio, our community platform, so that we can keep getting this information all the time in future. as well. So that's how we have been surviving. And we also think that what we do right now, nobody else is doing. And it's really important so that our community survives, gets through this pandemic, and we are willing to take some losses for the betterment of our community.
Well, I think that's very important and sums up, I think, what I heard from many outlets as you've been working through this time. I want to thank everybody who's here today. I think I said this at the beginning, I did, but that this report left us hopeful. And the work you're doing and the commitment and the passion, and also the savvy, like that you're developing in news outlets, you're responding to needs in your community very quickly, is very inspiring. And I hope this is the beginning of a conversation where continue to connect and build on what is the wealth that is within this network and in this virtual room today. So I just want to thank all of you very much.
Thank you, Daniela, and thank you all the panelists and all the attendees. So the goal of the Center for Community Media is to center community media and to have these conversations, to bring all of your experience and solutions and innovation into the larger conversation around the state of news media and the future of journalism in this country. So I added that in the chat box, but one thing we're constantly doing is asking outlets, publishers, reporters working for community media. And when I say community media, I mean media serving immigrant communities, linguistic communities, Latinx communities, and Black media, to let us know if there's some specific resources or facilitate forums like these or conversations. We have a robust programming, and we do many of these. But if there's something we're not doing and no one else is doing that would be useful, that's a resource that maybe we can help bring to you, do reach out to us. We also have a newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks. It's last Wednesday came out, so next Wednesday, July the 8th, I think it is, it's going to come out. We share there. It's a very long newsletter. Don't blame us for that. We have too much to say. And it's basically a list of resources, and it's very, we think, timely resources. So, every time there's grants for that community media can apply to, or there's trainings that are available, or resources, or a new network. The last resource we offered last week was this new partner we have at CCM, a network of legal clinics or law clinics around the country to offer free pro bono support, legal support to community media. So if you need a lawyer for free for something that connects to your outlet, that's something we can connect you with, and that kind of resources. So do stay in touch, and if you want to suggest ideas, please. We're always listening from you, and you have our email there. You can reach out to me directly, and we have a lot of information in our webpage. The initiative that Gary mentioned about the advertising boost initiative, that we're trying to replicate in other cities. We have published a lot of information about that. I think it can be replicated in cities with a robust number of community media outlets, and there are many. And then you can also see our research. And for those who haven't read it, please read Daniela's report that prompt this meeting, this forum today, and about innovation in immigrant media, because it's fantastic. And thank you so much for staying for an hour and a half almost. That's a lot. We know that's a lot.
Thank you guys for putting this together. Really beautiful. I learned a lot. Thanks.
Mohammed, I just have one question. Are you driving? I know you're an Uber driver. Are you driving right now while participating?
No, I'm just sitting in the car, and I was trying to do interview right now, and for a program, and just I didn't want to miss, so I was just. I apologize for the signal also.
No, I appreciate it. I feel like that's true dedication. I'm really grateful.
Thank you. I learned a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. I think you can go. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Hasta luego, muchas gracias. Bye bye.
Hasta luego. Un placer.
That's your call.
Thank you, gracias.
De nada.